The night was unusually quiet, the streets stretching endlessly under the dim glow of flickering streetlights. Every turn of the wheel made a soft hum against the asphalt, echoing in the emptiness around. I had been driving for hours, the weight of the day pressing down on my shoulders, the loneliness gnawing quietly at the edges of my thoughts. Something about the stillness made me uneasy, a subtle tension I couldn't quite shake. Then, the sudden flash of lights in my rearview mirror broke the rhythm of my drive. Heart quickened, I instinctively slowed down, the red and blue reflections washing over the windshield. Two policemen approached, their forms shadowed and faceless in the harsh streetlight, their presence commanding yet oddly distant. I rolled down the window, the night air heavy and cold against my skin. "License and registration, please," one of them said, the voice calm but carrying a note of authority that made my stomach twist. I fumbled through my bag, hands trembling slightly, feeling the weight of unseen eyes on me. The world seemed to shrink to the small space between the car and the offices, every sound amplified, the rustle of a jacket, the soft click of a pen against metal, the distant hum of the city that now felt impossibly far away. After a few moments of inspection, the taller officer gestured toward a nearby building. "We need you to step inside for a moment," he said. There was no explanation, just a steady insistence that left little room for argument. My pulse quickened again, a mix of fear and curiosity that twisted in my chest. I nodded, my voice caught somewhere between compliance and hesitation. The hallway leading into the building was dimly lit, walls painted in muted shades, echoing every footstep I took. They asked me to wait, and then one of them guided me into a separate room. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded far too loud in the silence. The room itself was nondescript, almost sterile, bare walls, a single desk, and a chair that seemed to swallow me whole. Shadows pulled in the corners, giving the room a sense of intimacy and isolation that made my skin prickle. Alone, I couldn't ignore the rush of thoughts circling in my mind. Why had I been brought here? Had I done something wrong, or was this just a routine check gone unusual? My hands fidgeted with the edge of the desk, tracing invisible patterns, grounding myself in the tactile world to quiet the storm of uncertainty. Every noise, the soft scrape of a pen on paper outside, the distant echo of voices, made me flinch, yet there was an odd allure in the solitude, a strange moment suspended between fear and anticipation. Time stretched and compressed in strange ways. My breathing, shallow at first, began to synchronize with the quiet rhythm of the room. There was a weight in the silence, an unspoken expectation that seemed to hover just beyond the shadows. And then, the faint sound of footsteps returning reminded me I was not truly alone, that this encounter was far from over. The footsteps grew closer, echoing softly against the walls, each one a reminder that I wasn't truly alone. The door opened, a shadow slipping inside before the light revealed nothing more than a silhouette. The figure moved with a quiet confidence, and though I couldn't see a face, there was something in the way the shoulders relaxed, the hands rested on the desk, that suggested a strange familiarity with authority. "Sit down," the voice said, low and calm, yet carrying a subtle warmth that made me pause. I did as instructed, the chair cold beneath me, the silence thick with expectation. There was a moment where nothing was said, the two of us separated only by the desk, the space between us charged in ways I hadn't anticipated. I could feel the tension in my own body, the rhythm of my pulse echoing in my ears, while every subtle movement of the figure, the shift of weight, the crossing of legs, the quiet scratch of a pen, made my senses sharpen. Questions flickered through my mind, but the words caught in my throat. There was something about the quiet intensity of this encounter that drew me in, a mixture of fear and something else, something I couldn't name. It was dangerous, I knew that. Every rule I had lived by, every moral line I had drawn, suddenly seemed thin, fragile, easily blurred. And yet, I couldn't stop the curiosity from rising, the magnetic pull that made my heart race even as my mind screamed caution. "You seem tense," the voice said after a moment, almost a whisper, not quite commanding but not entirely casual either. My fingers fidgeted with the edge of the desk, tracing invisible patterns, as I forced a laugh that didn't reach my eyes. "Just nervous, I guess," I murmured. The shadow across from me shifted slightly, the movement deliberate yet unassuming, and I felt the faintest brush of attention, a subtle gesture that sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. I caught myself studying the figure's hands, the gentle movement as they folded together, the way they occasionally tapped lightly against the wood. There was an odd intimacy in the details, a closeness that didn't need a face to be understood. The danger of it, the impropriety, only made it more thrilling. Every moment stretched, charged with an energy I hadn't felt in years, a heady combination of desire and fear, excitement and guilt. A soft cough, almost unnoticeable, brought me back to the room, to the present, to the awareness that this was a moment suspended on the edge of something forbidden. My breathing caught again, shallow and rapid, as I realized how far my mind had wandered, how willingly I had allowed it to drift toward temptation. The shadow leaned slightly forward, the movement intimate, yet still faceless, still a mystery, yet somehow profoundly affecting. And then the voice, low and deliberate, broke the silence. Do you know how easy it is to cross a line? There was no judgment, no accusation, just an unspoken challenge, a draw into something both thrilling and perilous. My chest tightened, my mind a chaotic whirl of fear, desire, and guilt. I realized, with a shiver I couldn't suppress, that this encounter had already begun to change me. The air in the room seemed to thicken, every breath drawing me deeper into a strange intimacy I hadn't anticipated. The shadow across from me remained still for a moment, the faintest movements, the tap of a finger, the shifting of weight, speaking louder than words. I felt exposed, though no face was visible, as if every secret thought I had was somehow laid bare in the quiet. I know why you're here, the voice said softly, almost gently, and it made me flinch. Not because of accusation, but because of the calm certainty behind it. My hands clenched briefly in my lap, and I realized I had been holding them far too tensely, every muscle tight with anticipation. And I can tell you've been carrying something with you, something you haven't shared with anyone. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Could this faceless figure see into me so clearly? My mind raced, thoughts I had kept hidden now rising unbidden. Dissatisfaction, restlessness, a longing for connection I hadn't admitted even to myself. And yet, beneath it all, there was a thrill, the knowledge that someone else, faceless though they were, had recognized the part of me I often tried to ignore. The shadow leaned slightly closer, subtle, careful, and I felt the pull of it as surely as if a hand had grazed my arm. We all have moments where we wonder what it would be like to step outside the lines we've drawn, the voice continued, low, intimate, almost a confession of its own. My chest tightened, and I realized the danger wasn't just physical, it was emotional, psychological, a tug at the very boundaries of who I believed I was. I wanted to respond, to speak, to say something that might anchor me to reality, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, my eyes, though unseen, focused on the small details, the way the hands rested on the desk, the subtle tilt of the head, the weight of attention in every motion. I felt seen in a way that made me vulnerable and aware, guilty and exhilarated all at once. You're not alone in feeling this, the voice said quietly, almost a whisper now. I've felt it too, the pull, the temptation, the secret desire to escape the rules for just a moment. The admission hung in the room, heavy and charged, and I realized that the line I thought was unbreakable had already blurred. My heart raced, guilt and longing intertwined, each one feeding the other. I leaned back slightly, pressing my hands against my face, trying to ground myself, to remind myself of the life waiting outside, the responsibilities and relationships I couldn't abandon. And yet, a part of me, the part one had tried to silence for so long, wanted nothing more than to stay in this suspended, faceless moment, to explore the intensity of connection without boundaries. A soft noise from outside the room startled me, a reminder that the world continued beyond this charged isolation. My pulse slowed slightly, but the tension lingered, a quiet echo in my chest. I knew this encounter had changed something inside me, a shift subtle yet undeniable, and the question of what to do with it now rested entirely on me. The footsteps outside faded, leaving me alone again, yet the room felt heavier somehow, charged with the memory of what had just passed. I remained seated for a long moment, hands resting on the edge of the desk, staring at nothing in particular. The silence that followed was no longer empty, it carried a weight, a lingering presence that refused to leave even after the shadow had gone. I stood slowly, the chair scraping softly against the floor, and walked toward the door. My reflection in the window caught my attention, though it was only a blurred, faceless shape. I studied the movement of my hands, the slight tremor in my fingers, and realized how deeply the encounter had unsettled me. There was guilt, yes, but also an undeniable sense of exhilaration, a thrill that hummed quietly beneath the surface of my nerves. The night outside was unchanged, yet I felt different stepping back onto the street. The cool air brushed against my skin, carrying with it the ordinary sounds of cars and distant voices, but I noticed them less, preoccupied with the echo of the shadow's words. Every step I took toward my car seemed to echo, a reminder that nothing could ever truly return to the way it had been before. I slid into the driver's seat, gripping the wheel tightly, aware of the tension still coiled in my chest. The lights flickered above, casting long shadows across the dashboard, and I couldn't help but replay every detail of the room, every subtle movement, every quiet admission. A part of me knew this was fleeting, a moment suspended in time, yet another part wondered how it would shape the choices I would make going forward. The drive home was silent, my mind a restless whirl. I thought of home, of responsibilities waiting for me, of the life I had paused for this brief encounter. And yet, a small, rebellious part of me relished the memory, the unseen hands, the whispered words, the tension that had seemed almost tangible. It was a dangerous thrill, a reminder that even the most ordinary life could hold secrets beneath its surface. By the time I pulled into the driveway, night had deepened, shadows stretching long across the lawn. I sat for a moment, engine off, gripping the wheel as if it could anchor me to reality. The memory of the faceless figure, of the quiet intensity, lingered, a presence that refused to be shaken off. I knew that the encounter would echo in my mind for days, weeks, perhaps longer, a whisper of temptation and the complexities of desire. I stepped inside quietly, careful not to disturb the stillness of the house, and moved through familiar spaces with a new awareness. Every object, every shadow seemed charged with meaning, reminders of boundaries crossed and emotions stirred. There was no conclusion, no tidy resolution, only the knowledge that life had shifted subtly, irrevocably, in ways I would carry with me. As I closed the door behind me, a faint vibration from my phone drew my attention. A message, a notification, something ordinary in form yet loaded with possibility. I didn't open it immediately. I simply held it in my hand, feeling the pulse of my own heartbeat and the quiet thrill of what had passed. Some things, I realized, are meant to remain unresolved, their power lying not in the answers but in the lingering questions they leave behind.